repairing the roads. Why, the cones signal a lot more chaos this summer. And I do apologise if you're hearing quite a lot of noise in this studio at the moment. I'm afraid that we have rather been invaded by some people who we hope to be removing very shortly. In the meantime, if you can possibly ignore the background news, we'll bring the news as best we can.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a nice conditioning course for Vietnam.
And now, the first in a new weekly magazine programme on music, entertainment and the arts, Mainstream.
Mainstream was an invention of mine when I was, in the dim distant past, head of the Music and Arts Department in BBC Television. And by that time, we'd had Arena well and truly established. We had Omnibus for 20 years established. And I argued with Bill Cotton, who was the head of BBC One at that time, that we should try something totally different.
Hello and welcome to Mainstream, tonight coming live from the Royal Shakespeare Company at Stratford-on-Avon. Well, there's a performance of Julius Caesar in full swing here, and in London at this moment, at the RSC's Aldwych Theatre, it's the first night of Gorky's Children of the Sun. We'll be looking at the work of this remarkable company tonight, and I think you could also say that we're whizzing around the country with the arts generally.
Well, here in Bristol tonight,
here in Manchester.
We have our money problems in Scotland, too.
Stunning, and I use the word carefully.
It was a humdinger of a flop. I mean, it was a glorious celebration of a flop. I mean, it wasn't one of those programmes that trail off into disaster and sort of vanish through the sand. Everybody enjoyed it. The newspapers relished the disasters. Even the people making it couldn't believe that it was going this wrong.
It wasn't helped by the fact that the producer, on the day of transmission, sent a message from a helicopter where he was shooting up in Suffolk for a different film altogether, saying that he decided to quit the programme, was not actually going to be present that evening.
Now, when you lose your editor, when the show has just started its run, you are in real trouble.
Even if you don't go near a theatre yourself, you'll know many of the RSC's actors and actresses from their television appearances. Othello, for example, is Donald Sindon of Two's company.
They tried to cram lots and lots of little items into a programme in order to indicate that everybody had a share in the arts. Well, of course, it makes the arts look stupid.
You took La Scala to the factory?
Yes, we play many times in the factory. We play also in school. We form really a new audience in Milano.
Mainstream interpreted the idea of taking art to the masses as you talk to Claudio Bardo about music to begin with, because that's what he's about, but you make it popular by talking to him about football.
La Scala against the LSO. That could be an interesting game.
Yeah, we did already 4 years ago when La Scala played in Covent Garden. We did exchange Covent Garden Scala.
Now that seemed to me absolutely crazy. If you've got Claudio Bardo on a programme, an occasional remark about football is quite funny, but it isn't a way to popularise Beethoven's symphonies.
Dare I ask who won?
Sorry?
Who won?
Won a Scala, 4-1.
I've never been able to remember bad reviews, or good ones either, come to that, but I do remember that everybody thought this was a bit of a mishmash.
And on a lighter note, just opened in Newcastle and all over the northeast is a festival of food and wine. There'll be a world high-speed cookery attempt, a best banger competition, and an exhibition of edible art. I think they thought I'd bring a kind of jolly dungarees look to it, you know, and break down a few barriers, which I was excited and hoped I'd be able to do. Here we have an incredible creation made out of chocolate. It contains, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, 90 chocolate fingers, a large cut-out flan, various other marshmallows, all stuck together with what?
Melted chocolate.
Melted chocolate and liberally dusted with icing sugar. And I'm going to ruin it by eating it now. I'd prepared this interview and I was quite looking forward to it. You know, it seemed to be out of the mould of sitting and introducing serious concerts. And when the time came, of course, it had been squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and it ended up as a kind of statement to camera, a turn round, an eat of a biscuit from it, and the poor man just stood there like a lemon. Can I start there?
Start there.
Right. Very good.
Keats's favourite epitaph was "Here lies one whose name was writ on water." And you could say about Mainstream that it was writ on water. It went down the stream, washed away, and was never seen again.
Well, it's difficult to take anything like this too seriously.
Mark, why do you like taking your clothes off?
Well, I only enjoyed it if the circumstances are suitable.
We just thought it was a good idea. Oh, you don't want beans then? Yeah. Oh, you and your beans. You'll go fine.
Isn't that a dangerous job?
It could be, if you didn't know what you were doing.
found ourselves involved with an almost impossible mission to launch a new service when nobody had any TV sets to view it, and where you had to have a new aerial, and where the BBC was committed in all sorts of ways to producing a channel which would not necessarily appeal to the majority audiences. And all we had was our publicity, and there was plenty of it, and we had a kangaroo called Hullabaloo and Custard, the little BBC Two in the pouch, and there was a great sense of occasion. The telegrams were pouring in, letters galore from everyone and sundry, strangers and friends, 20 or so people in my office, and there we were suddenly at 7 o'clock, the BBC logo card came on the air. And then at 7:10, I think, everything plunged into darkness, complete darkness.
There certainly was an idea going round that this might have been dirty work by ITV, because when ITV started some years previously, on their opening night, Grace Archer was killed in BBC's Archer series, and that got the headlines the next day, not the start of ITV.
As we came nearer and nearer to 7:30, and then past 7:30, towards 8 o'clock, it became clear that it was a very serious power cut affecting the whole of the southwest of London. I think it was a fuse in Battersea Power Station that had gone, and that there was really no possibility of transmitting anything out of Television Centre that night.
The Mirror editorial expressed sympathy for BBC planners and producers and said it shouldn't have happened to a dog. It had to happen to a peacock.
If we hadn't gone off the air, there wouldn't have been anything like the public awareness of the fact that we existed. We wouldn't have had been front page stories the next day in almost every paper. And of course, that all helped. It helped give us a curious sort of momentum, and we just started the channel 24 hours later.
Good evening. This is BBC Two.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Brits, 89.
She's out of control already, I can tell. I've got to control this woman. I've got to control her over here.
Oh, that was a good start, wasn't it, Mick?
Tonight, Bookmark comes live from Stationers' Hall in the City of London for the presentation of Britain's most important literary prize, the 1983 Booker McConnell Award for Literature.
Now, you had 100 books to read. Yes. Did you read all of them?
Of course I did.
How can you choose? I'm pleased to hear that.
We've seen a bevy of newcomers arrive who look set here to stay. Ross! Pasadena! Brother Beyond and more!
Many more, right?
Madam, can I ask you what you think of the choice of the winner?
I was one of the judges. Does that exclude me from this?
I'm sorry about that. What's your name?
Angela Carter.
Hello.
Tonight, they're totally compos mentis, whatever that means, I don't know, here in London. The fabulous, the legendary, the sensational, the Four Tops.
Yes, tell me, what do you think?
It's a very powerful and impressive novel.
Was it your choice?
You shouldn't ask a question like that.
From Selina Scott and from me, a very good night.
Georgina, Miss Wishaw, Linda, Miss Greenock, Anne, Miss Coatbridge, Lorraine, Miss Glasgow East, Patricia, Miss Ballock, Angela, Miss Bathgate, and Lena, Miss Edinburgh Central.
It's a miracle, miracle, the true blue spectacle, a miracle.
Carol Margaret, Miss Dundee, Elaine, Miss Arbroath, Yvonne, Miss Kilmarnock, Jackie, Miss Glasgow South, Elizabeth Joy, Miss Paisley, Christine, Miss Johnston, and Jackie, Miss Aberdeen.
Well, here I am back in the Midlands looking for some of the people you'll be seeing a lot of in the very near future. I believe two of them are shopping around here at this moment. And here they are, Kitty Jarvis and Meg Richardson. How do you do, Kitty?
How do you do?
How do you do, Meg?
Hello.
Meg, I believe you run a motel. That must keep you pretty busy.
Oh, my goodness, it does, especially when business is like it is the next few weeks. We're booked absolutely solid.
And you still find time to do shopping in the town?
Well, I've got to, you see, because I've only got a teenage daughter helping me. My schoolboy son isn't a lot of use. I'm really expecting a Spanish cook, but I've got a special do coming up, a wedding, and I'm looking for champagne and lobsters for it, so if you'll excuse me, I think I'd better get on.
Certainly, I won't keep you.
See you later, Kitty.
Goodbye,
Bye-bye.
I love to look at ladies that take their clothes off.
I think I probably originated the idea of doing the Seven Deadly Sins, which has been done actually a fair number of times. I think it was what I call a dinner party idea, which is you all sit around and think it's a great idea for a program, and then someone turns around and says, do it. And you say, no, I didn't actually mean that, but by that stage it's got into the system.
But to help us to examine lust, we've got a man who wants a woman to be an angel to his friends, a nun in the street, and a whore in bed. We've got a nun, or an ex-nun, who climbed over the convent wall to discover lust for herself, plus an ex-pornographic movie star who became a legend in her own bedtime.
It sounds an interesting idea to have Linda Lovelace and Karen Armstrong, who's a former nun, sitting together.
Linda Lovelace and Karen Armstrong.
And then in the same studio you have a rock band who will sing. Someone had thought, let's have a line of bathing beauties because that will look quite good on television. But when Falk comes up to them and says,
how do you define lust?
And then immediately after that you will walk over and have 6 members of the Salvation Army sitting there.
Is there lust in a Christian marriage?
They said no.
No, there's no room at all, I say, Bernard, to this, not for lust at all.
But they didn't say anything else, you see, because they don't have any views on it beyond thinking that it doesn't. So then they talked about their view, and this happened all the time.
Before we went on, I was sitting behind a curtain, and I was waiting for my cue, and Oliver Reed was sitting next to me. And he decided he didn't want to go on because he thought the format was completely wrong. And he told me this in great detail, very forcefully.
Oliver Reed and Charlotte Lamb.
So when we came on, he started going off towards the audience, and I had to grab his hand and literally make him go onto the set. He kept saying, this is a disaster.
This was one of the first sightings of a very excitable, extremely excitable Oliver Reed being interviewed by Falk.
I love to look at ladies that take their clothes off. I love to look... I don't even give a jot whether fellas take their clothes off and jump upon them. I think that if that is lust, that's jolly good too. I think that if lust, listen, coming back to...
Ollie,
no,
before you go on,
no.
I do want to
Battle
bring
of Conquest
in Charlotte.
for a fellow...
It looked at one point as if Falk wouldn't be able to shut him up, but he did.
Ollie, I must talk to Charlotte.
It committed the deadliest sins in television of being both boring and banal. And so the first debate was to whether or not there should be a programme too. But of course you have to give it at least one more try.
Well, good evening. And covetousness this week.
And by the time I'd seen the cast list for the studio guests, I sort of sensed that the train was heading at high speed off the end of the tracks.
What do you covet now, John? You seem now to be moving back into a form of public life, making personal appearances.
Yes, I do it because you invited me.
Yes, you did.
I think you're a great guy.
Fame's not a bad thing anyway.
No, I think
it does
that...
help pay the rent.
I think Bernard here has got a great idea for a programme, and it's a live programme, and I think we should all help live programmes because that's what TV should be about.
Well, there was a lot of discussion between myself and Alistair Milne. I think Alistair, perhaps, might have wanted the programme off after the second show. But I said, let's give it one more throw.
Next week, a 26-stone bounty hunter from California, cookery expert Fanny Craddock, footballer George Best, and the commandant of a health farm. And the deadly sin is gluttony. So join us again.